Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:07. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here on our Tuesday morning version of this sunrise extravaganza, we like to call it. Actually, we never call it that, but well, maybe it'll take off. Coming up in a bit, we have more unhinged ranting from the DNC summer meetings. Tim Walz, I believe, truly does have some sort of mental illness. We'll get to them. And a stunning announcement about how getting tough on crime, violent crime in our cities is actually totalitarian, authoritarian behavior. That's what the Democrats think, which explains why they're perfectly fine with violent crime in the cities they run. That's all coming up in just a bit. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And joining us right now is friend of the program and, a friend to freedom of speech, friend to America, friend to journalists everywhere, trying to cover the Trump administration and the White House as a reporter for the RealClearPolitics, graduate from Hillsdale College, trying to do his job with truth and dignity. And I always say something that embarrasses him and gets him in trouble. So let's have some fun with Phil Wegmann of RealClearPolitics. Good morning, Philip.
That was a wind-up.
First of all, and in all seriousness, what a stunning day for you to be a part of the pool in the Oval Office yesterday, as finally the Gold Star families from Abbeygate, who we acknowledge and honor here on the 4th anniversary of that tragedy, finally got to meet the commander-in-chief and actually begin that healing process, considering how they were treated by the Biden administration.
They were there in the Oval Office. It was clear that these families were not meeting Donald Trump for the first time. Instead, there was a familiarity because he had spoken with them, for the last 2, 3, 4 years. It was instead, it's just the first time he was there to welcome them to the White House. But it wasn't just a meet and greet. What was significant about the meeting that they had yesterday with the president was he was able to update them on this ongoing review that the Trump administration is doing of how Biden and company, withdrew the United States from Afghanistan. And the bit of news that came out of that on a really tragic 4-year anniversary is the defense secretary said that review would be finished by midpoint 2026.
Has there been sort of the delay in this review? Are there any indications that that's been a problem? Because again, it seems like perhaps evidence is missing or memories have faded. Was there any indication, or have you talked to anybody conducting this review if that's an issue?
The longer you go after these events,
Right.
the more difficult sometimes it can be to get contemporaneous information. What I've picked up on, though, is that there was a frustration with some of the investigations that Capitol Hill had launched previously. That some of the House committees were a bit wanting in the eyes of these families. And also, this won't be lawmakers pressing the Pentagon for information because it'll be the Pentagon itself doing the investigation. And from the very beginning, they've reached one conclusion, which is that this was a massive failure. And so I think that there's less of an attempt to sort of cover for the DOD and the military brass here.
President Trump also said during there's a lot that happened in this Oval Office meeting, Phil. You really got to see a lot, and you engaged with the president on some questions I want to get to. But quickly, he mused that he would rename the Department of Defense to the Department of War, which is something he talked about on the campaign trail. Is that something that a president can do unilaterally?
That's a question that Donald Trump is not totally certain himself on. He was asked yesterday if he was serious about it. Or if he needed Congress to move with legislation. It was renamed the Department of Defense in the reorganization post Second World War through an act of Congress that did a number of different things. He can certainly call it where he wants, and he probably will. But we'll see if to make that name stick, he actually gets legislation. I think there's probably a couple of Republicans who would introduce that bill, but we'll have to wait and see.
All right, and also I want to get to an exchange you had with him, if I may, over the purchase that the U.S. government has transacted now, giving them 10% ownership of Intel. And I'm reading how you've detailed your exchange with him here on the X social media platform. Did you really say to the President of the United States, isn't that kind of communist-y?
No, I think I'd get my head bit off if I put it that bluntly. I think the exact phrasing was I asked the president. I noted that he had called former Vice President Kamala Harris Comrade Kamala, that he had described her as a communist, but that even the Biden-Harris administration had not, sought to nationalize different private companies like he was trying to do with Intel. And I asked him if that was a bit hypocritical. That might have softened.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, so you called the president a hypocrite instead of suggesting he's a communist. Okay, forgive me for misquoting you, Phil.
Trump was game for the question, though. It certainly is a bit odd there that he would do this. He said that he was interested in obtaining more companies. This is sort of FDR-esque of Trump, certainly not in the vein of Calvin Coolidge or Ronald Reagan, but he said that he was interested in acquiring more companies. And when I sort of pushed him in a follow-up about was this not the type of activity that he was warning against during the campaign, he said, hey, it is a bit unusual, but so are tariffs. And I think in his mind, so long as he's getting a good deal, he's not worried with any of these sort of GOP niceties about limited government or economic orthodoxy.
I mean, the rationale, and I think it's worthy of an extended debate, and we can certainly have plenty of guests on both sides of the issue, and I get it. But the rationale is it's been determined that manufacturing chips is 100% a national security issue. That's without a doubt. And we've been giving billions and billions of dollars to these companies in grants as part of the Chips and Science Act and all of these things. So if we're giving them grants to the tune of billions of dollars for national security and they're making profit and money for their shareholders, well, why shouldn't the federal government, I guess, look at it instead of a grant, make an investment, and we get a return on that investment? I get that rationale. I guess the concern is that you've now got the federal government as a stakeholder and potentially, directing that industry and that company, and God knows the government is not capable of doing that. Worthy debate. I'm sorry, you don't need to respond, Phil. You're a bipartisan.
No, I think you summarized their thinking very well. What I was a bit surprised to hear from the president yesterday, though, and I should note, they called the pool into the White House, into the Oval Office 3 different times. This was the first time we saw the president in the morning. Later, we saw him during the South Korean president's visit, and then finally the Gold Star families. But what I was surprised by is Trump didn't just make that argument. He was speaking more generally about good deals, and he seemed to be excited about this possibility and then other industries as well.
Yeah. Listen, Phil, I got one more question for you, so stay with us, and then we'll get to the Looney Tune circus at the DNC. First, though, it's 8:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Another question for Phil Wegmann here, the White House correspondent for RealClearPolitics. Phil, I remember when Trump was elected president the first time, and people were like, oh, what's he going to do? Is he going to change the White House and make it all covered in gold leaf with gold toilets and gold staircases? And what, he's going to be like the Trump Tower at the White House? And all of us were like, that's ridiculous. He's not going to do that. However... However, it appears now when you walk into the newly redesigned Oval Office, and Phil, you've been in there a few times in this term, it's like every couple of months there's a new layer of gold. I mean, the place is gilded. Can you give us a sort of your firsthand assessment of what it's looking like right now?
Donald Trump is the Henry, the Liberace of Henry Ford. You can have any color you like so long as it comes in gold. I mean, there is so much gold leaf from top to bottom in the Oval Office, and it's everywhere. Some people think it's tasteful, other people hate it, but I did think it was kind of it was telling. The president poked a little bit of fun at himself the other day. He had the FIFA World Cup statue there, which is also gold.
Also gold, yeah.
And he looked at it,
this
mentioned that
matches.
it was also gold, and he said, "They really know how to get to me."
I love how Phil answers the question. You're so diplomatic. Some people think it's tacky. Some people think it's tasteful. Way to dodge, Phil. I totally respect that. But can we also just talk really quickly about Trump's comments about allowing 600,000 Chinese students into the country? This is something that's sort of a gut punch to, America first and, people who've been really critical of higher ed. My colleague, and I know Inez Stepman this week said, because Lutnick goes on TV and says, well, universities are going to close. And Inez goes, what's the problem? And I think a lot of people agree with that. What are your thoughts on that?
That one took us back by surprise. I mean, Trump sort of slipped that in during the second meeting in the Oval Office when he said, 600,000 Chinese students would be paying full freight. This is obviously a subsidy to some of these universities because they do pay that full tuition.
Yeah.
The concern is that we've seen bad behavior from Chinese nationals in the past. It's less about an exchange of goodwill and education, and instead an attempt at technology transfer, and it's to the benefit, some conservatives complain, to some of these incredibly liberal universities. I think that what we see from Trump is he has strong opinions loosely held, and in this case he thinks that letting that more than 500,000 Chinese students into the U.S. university system as something that's going to make it easier for him to get what he wants out of China. This is clearly sort of the carrot, and he's happy to use this carrot rather than the stick. But yeah, I think the White House, they're going to face some blowback from the right on that.
Phil Wegmann is the White House reporter for RealClearPolitics. He was part of the pool yesterday, and we keep talking about there were multiple visits to the Oval Office for various signings and announcements. It was a very busy day. You also got to engage with the president over the security agreements that have been suggested for Ukraine in a potential peace deal with Russia. And what did the president reveal to you there in terms of what we might be paying, whether we'd be sending troops, whether we would be subsidizing Ukraine for their security needs?
So the president, Trump, he's been pretty flexible on this. He goes to Alaska saying that there's, he needs a ceasefire, and then he walks that back. For several months, he said that the United States was not going to guarantee, security, but then he's warmed up to that idea. The one thing that he's been incredibly consistent on, though, is one, he wants the war to end, and then two, he has been consistent saying that there's not going to be U.S. boots on the ground. He has been open, though, previously in that Fox and Friends interview immediately after he returns from Alaska, and so is Caroline Leavitt. They've both left the door open to the possibility of U.S. air assets securing the skies over Ukraine. I asked the president about U.S. personnel perhaps being in danger on that front, even if they're not on the ground. Trump, ever mercurial, he wouldn't show his cards. He said, hey, maybe that is part of the negotiations. Maybe it's not. But he's looking for European allies to shoulder the majority of the load here.
There was also a conversation about the murder rate in D.C. and the fact that as of yesterday, there had been 12 days without a murder. This, of course, is a result of the president's insistence that federal law enforcement cooperate with the local law enforcement and sort of take the D.C. council and the mayor's office out of the mix, at least for the 30-day window he can as the president. Were you in the room when Stephen Miller made an announcement? He said that they've been looking at some of the crime stat manipulation. And did I hear right that he said that murders in D.C. were actually recorded as accidents?
He did, and Stephen Miller said that he was going to release more of those numbers. The D.C. crime statistics have been in dispute. Someone lost their job over this previously, and then you have the D.C. police union saying that the previous the current D.C. administration was padding those numbers. So the White House argument is that things were worse than they already were. The 12-day stretch then of not having any murders, they see that as a low bar, but it's one that they're going to tout because for some time, according to Stephen Miller and Vice President Vance, there was a murder in D.C. There's one murder every other day going back decades. So they see this as a good start, but just the first step.
Phil Wegmann, a friend of the program. We have a great admiration for you and your publication, RealClearPolitics, and we know, of course, about your undying love for your mother, which is always a wonderful thing. You're a really
You'll
good
never
son.
escape that here. Sorry.
And so because of that, I'm looking out for your mom because I'm a parent and with kids in the working world. Do me a favor. When you're in the White House pool and you're in the Oval Office, don't stand still. Always be moving around. Otherwise, they're going to drape you in gold leaf. You're going to look like an Academy Award, all right? You don't want that. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
You cannot stand still in the Trump White House.
He's my favorite. He's my favorite guest because
we
of
love
the
Phil
mom thing.
Wegmann. He's great.
Yeah, we do.